Hello everyone, my name is Michael Otten, and this is my presentation on book Firestarters. A summary of Firestarters. Firestarters is a fictional graphic novel about two indigenous teenagers, Ben and Ron Whiteout, who get wrongly accused of setting a gas station on fire. The story follows how the community responds to this, and how the two boys that did start the fire, one being the sheriff's son, wrestle with bringing the truth to light. After being detained at the police station, rumors spread throughout school, and Ron gets his braid pulled, starting a fight where racist chants start, and he ends up getting pulled out of school completely. Eventually, the sheriff notices evidence that his son perpetuated the crime, but hides it until the store security cameras reveal the true culprit. Mike, the sheriff's son, ends up taking the blame eventually, and the story ends with him doing community service and making peace with the White Owl family. Background information. The author of Firestarters is Jen Storm. The illustrator is Scott B. Henderson, and the person in charge of coloring the book was Donovan Yakwich. Jen Storm is an Ojibwe from the Cochiching First Nation and was born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. While Firestarters isn't her first book, it is her first graphic novel. Scott B. Henderson is an author and illustrator who often works with Indigenous people to bring their works to life in a respectful manner. Donovan Yakwich is a color artist who lives in Winnipeg, Canada. In regards to the background information of the book, the Agaming Reserve is a fictional place that the book takes place in, showcasing stereotypical portrayals of Indigenous people and reserves. The identity it portrays is never mentioned, but the grandmother occasionally uses Ojibwe words, which matches with the indigenous identity of the author. A deeper dive. Firestarters opens with the book's Ben and Ron Whiteout taking off to get butter from a gas station. Before leaving, Ron finds a flare gun in the garage and decides to take it with them to go shooting in the dump after their errand. At the store, they find Jason and Mike, who are trying to get away with buying cigarettes while underage. The clerk shoos them off, but not before Mike shoplifts a pack. After messing with the flare gun at the dump, everyone heads home. Jason tells Mike the cameras will have seen him shoplifting, and Mike decides to sneak out that night and make sure he isn't caught. He ends up burning the store down, and the police show up to question Ben and Ron. After taking them into custody for the day, they eventually get out, with some difficulty, and the next day the boys go to school. Rumors have spread, and the White Owls are constantly harassed. After Ron fights a kid back and ends up getting suspended, the sheriff comes back to the house with a warrant and searches the place, but can't find anything. The next day, the boys have a hockey match, but it's heated by the community, constantly harassing the boys. Afterwards, the sheriff tells Mike that he found evidence of him causing the fire and brings him to talk to the White Owls. The story ends with Mike apologizing and doing community service, cleaning up the burned store. How the story is told. As a graphic novel, most of the story is told through pictures, with most of the emotion being conveyed through facial expressions. It's a unique graphic novel, however, as it lacks onomatopoeias and narrative dialogue. A lot of its depth comes from showing instead of telling. One of the pages I found is really unique in this. It's a full-page panel shot showcasing multiple text boxes with insults. But instead of showing the insults, most of the words are barely cropped out by rocks, showing how each jab is just as harmful verbally as it is physically. It does an amazing job of showing how harmful verbal assault is and how the community has an underlying racist belief towards Indigenous people. Common themes. The story shows an underlying message in its stereotypes, especially in how the Indigenous people are treated, often being verbally and physically harassed, and how the White Owl boys were immediately suspects of the fire. It shows how the community held a negative feeling towards them. At one point, a school kid shouts out whooping, mimicking a native war cry. Throughout it, there's a strong identity caused by the White Owls. Ron's grandmother spoke about one of her sons and how he was a guide for American hunters, showing fishing and hunting spots that were passed down throughout the family. She also spoke in Ojibwe on multiple occasions, and Ron had long braided hair. Their identity is shown as a part of them rather than as a talking point in the story. While less notable, Firestarters has a good example of resistance, showing a continuation of native traditions despite the community's backlash earlier in the story. On the final page, Mike spreads the tobacco from the stolen cigarettes and says, "Miigwech for saving me." Miigwech is the Ojibwe word for thank you. And finally, the takeaway. Through reading Firestarters, it's easy to see how stereotypes still impact Indigenous people today. Reading the novel helped show me the small ways that racism and discrimination impact Indigenous people, especially today, in less direct ways. It was interesting to see some more into the lives of people living on reservations. And in conclusion, I recommend reading the graphic novel. It's pretty brief, but the message was straightforward and easy to understand. The end. I hope everyone enjoyed my presentation.